This is the carpenter. The carpenter is one of over 1,000 NPCs in the video game Red Dead Redemption 2. NPCs is short for non-playable characters. They are extras who live their lives in the background of the stage picture. They bring a bit of bustle into a lifeless world and thus simulate normality. At dawn, the carpenter immediately picks up his work. A hammer appears in his hand. The carpenter always drives 2 nails into the same spot. He exhibits a bit of extra spirit when sinking the second nail into the wood. Upon arriving at a spot he's about to work on, he seems a bit lost, as if the idea of sinking another nail had just crossed his mind that second. The stable hand is still utterly drunk from the night before. He wanders about, can't decide where to go, what to do, who he is.
Just want to get a drink.
His meandering concludes at a chopping block. Despite his apparent inebriation, every strike hits dead center. For most of his day, the stable hand carries a tin bucket around the village. He spills water into the troughs day in, day out. Yet they never overflow. And whenever the stable hand carries his bucket to the water pump, it is already filled to begin with.
Yeah, seem to recall hearing mention of that myself.
Just want to get a drink. I'm parched.
Yeah. Well, anyway.
The laundress kneels in the dirty and soaked muddy ground. Her clothes are full of holes. Her job is to scrub a tiny piece of cloth against the washboard for hours on end. Yet, she'll never hang it up to dry. The street sweeper has a decent work-life balance. She takes her job very seriously. She guides her broom with intent, and her gaze is directed at the ground at all times. She sweeps meticulously, almost gingerly even. There is one particular spot she always pays special attention to. For over 2.5 hours, she does nothing but sweep this one small area. And yet, all the effort doesn't lead to any visible changes. No matter how diligently she sweeps, the sidewalk remains dusty and full of dried mud. The carpenter's route always circles the same 13 locations on the same pier. Once per cycle, when he reaches a particular spot, he experiences an uplifting moment. Throughout his 11-hour workday, he sinks around 120 nails into the wood. Day after day, week after week. The product of his work does not concern him. Like in a capitalist economy, where the goal isn't to satisfy demands, but to accumulate, there is no option for the grind to stop. There will never be enough nails in the wood. On some days, a different woman occupies the laundress's wash tub. This other woman executes the exact same washing movements as she normally does. The body carrying out this kind of work is totally interchangeable. Nearly all women among the poorer classes work at home or as sex workers. They conduct their affairs in public spaces. Reproductive labor isn't confined to houses, but fully on display. Children don't exist. Even at night, many women can be observed working while the men get drunk.
Anyway.
Some women's lives consist exclusively of a sequence of different types of work. Whenever they do take a break, their gazes wander into the distance, almost as if they were daydreaming. Does the laundress dream of her desires, of the things she might see or become? Does she work this hard because she believes that it is her job that will emancipate her, turn her dreams into reality? Someday, at the terminal station of her infinite loop of labor performance, at noon, the stable hand never misses out on lunch. Though he's rarely in the mood for more than just 2 bites. His work never seems to quicken his appetite. Back at the sink, he suddenly freezes. Only his head moves as he looks around. He drops the plate into the sink, and it vanishes. The street sweeper's life is tied to a certain place. Throughout the day, a lot of people pass her by.
How we going?
She, in contrast, stays close to her house at all times. Sometimes, the street sweeper's broom disappears, vanishes into thin air. For her, that changes everything. Having lost her working tool, her only productive means, she is rendered out of work, in the most literal sense of the phrase. Condemned to idleness, she spends her time on the sidewalk in front of her house and does nothing. Day in, day out. This is all her life now consists of. Or was it the other way around? Was it her broom which forced the street sweeper to work? Is its loss a sort of liberation? Only one thing can throw the carpenter off his work loop: rain. In the moments before the first drops begin to fall, he ceases to work and just stands there, watching. This is the only moment the carpenter notices us. For just a split second, he looks us directly in the eyes. In the late afternoon, the stable hand carries bales of straw from the storage yard to the paddock. Tomorrow morning, all this straw will have disappeared, and the yard will once again be full, without a single horse having been taken care of. Everything is already there. Nothing inscribes itself. Nothing can change. It's hard to imagine a world without progress. Our faith in tomorrow's abundance is an imperative to keep everything going. It drives us forward without a sense of direction. In capitalism, the future is an asset, and it's already been sold. A paper-thin promise, masking deeply corrupted mechanics, creating a world caught in a state of permanent, raging presence. At close to 8 p.m., the carpenter calls it a day. He leans against a pile of barrels and lights a cigarette. Even now, he won't take off his working gloves. The carpenter is a frugal smoker. It takes him an entire night to finish a single cigarette. The laundress wanders through the slums. Even after kneeling for hours on end, her posture is upright, and she shows no signs of back pain.
Hey there. How are things?
She comes to a standstill next to a man.
You know how it is. My mama was precious, and my dad was
The entire night, she'll be standing there in front of the house with her arms crossed, while the man next to her gets drunk. Even while they are next to each other, every one of them stands there on his or her own. A relation of relationlessness. They form no such thing as a community. Only at dawn will the laundress continue her labor. She will leave without a word of goodbye. The street sweeper spends her evenings and nights on the same sidewalk she sweeps throughout the day.
Hey there.
How's everything going?
Oh, it's real good.
Her nights are restless.
Howdy.
While the people in the richer quarters disappear from the streets, the workers spend their nights in public spaces. The moon sheds a bright light on class society.
Well, you walking out or getting thrown out?
When the stable hand knocks off work, he visits the bar.
Hey there, mister.
Most evenings, he just sits there, wordlessly watching. On some occasions, he orders a beer, of which he takes 3 or 4 sips. Later, he gets up, dead drunk, from just those couple of mouthfuls. On his way back, the stable hand loses his bearings. He stops, turns around, and pauses. This is how he remains for the entirety of the night, until the sun has chased away the moon. In this time, he does not work, consume, or even sleep to regenerate his workforce. His idleness is a gesture more radical than you might think. On its own, his behavior might be viewed as an unremarkable bug, funny even. But in capitalism, a worker's time belongs to the person who bought it. To the employer, idle laborers aren't just lazy, they are stealing time. Idleness is theft. In this very moment, the stable hand is robbing the owning class of their control over his time. As organized and synchronized action, collective idleness could grind reality to a halt. And perhaps extort a future from the terror of permanent presence. Can we start glitching?